Whatever we can
How
do.
are you going to make it stay there, though?
This.
This is very tricky.
Why?
Yeah, you can. No, it can. It's good.
Okay.
It's good. It's good.
It's good. It's on?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great. Okay. Are you also recording the audio? Should we do a separate
If you
audio?
want me to, I'm happy
Better
to.
we do a separate audio, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. So, here's what we want to do. We have a clock or it's not? Okay, fine. So, the halachas of Gerus, and specifically a difficult Rashi in the sugya of simply the halachas of how we treat a ger, can serve as a window into, it will give us a view, a deep view into the nature of the relationship between Yisrael and the other nations, what we expect from them, what we want from them, and what we expect really from ourselves, and give us a sense of the Torah's plan for history, we can say. So we have this Gemara in Ivamis that tells us how to respond to a non-Jew who seeks to be Megayah. You tell him, what's motivating you to be Megayah? Don't you know that Yisrael these days are persecuted and they suffer? Why would you do this for? Everyone knows this famous Gemara. That's how we tell a ger. Why would you do such a crazy thing? If he says, I know all about this and I'm not worthy of that suffering with the Jews, then you accept him. And you tell him some of the mitzvahs, and then the Gemara, the Brisa says further that you're not medaktikim all of, you don't overdo it. You give him that first response of what he needs this for. But then if he pushes, if he insists, you take it easy. So why do we do this? Why do we have this funny kind of spiel with the ger? So the Gemara says like this: my timer. Why do we tell him, what are you doing this for? The parish nifresh. And notice this expression: the parish nifresh. Such that we tell him this so that if he's going to drop it and not go ahead with this, let him leave. The parish nifresh. Why? Why would we want him to leave? Because gerim are problematic for Yisrael like a sapachas, like a foreign growth, like a tzaras. The Gemara brings a pasuk that talks about gerim with this expression of sapachas. So gerim are problematic for the Jews like a sapachas, and Rashi says the reason is because they're oichzin ma'aseyim harishonim v'loimdim Yisrael mehem. They keep their old practices and they influence Yisrael who learns from their practices. So since gerim are problematic for Yisrael like a sapachas, so therefore we tell him, what are you doing this for? And this way, if he leaves, let him leave. And then the Gemara says, but if he insists on converting despite our initial attitude, you accept him and you don't keep on trying to reject him. Why? We read Megillas Rus, when Naomi saw that Rus was misametzes, she was pushing that she really wanted to come be Megayah, she stopped dissuading her. Okay. Now, on this expression of the Gemara that says iparish nifresh, if this potential convert will leave, let him leave. So Rashi says an interesting expression. Rashi says, nifresh v'lo ichbaslan. We don't care. Let him leave and we don't mind. V'lo ichbaslan. Now what Rashi is coming to explain is that the Gemara does not say that we tell him this in order that he leave. The Gemara doesn't say ki hechi the nifresh. The Gemara doesn't say let's give him this attitude so that we're better over them. That's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says the iparish nifresh. If he leaves, let him leave. It's like this. We don't care one way or the other, and that's exactly what Rashi says. Lo ichbaslan. But this is obviously problematic because if gerim are problematic, if gerim, their influence on the Jewish people is a negative influence, then we should prefer that he not be Megayah. So why did the Gemara say that we tell him this so that if he leaves, let him leave? And then Rashi says, and we don't care. The Gemara should say, ki hechi the nefesh, so that he leaves. Now there's a Tosfos about this on Daf Kuf Tes, from in Nivamis also, from which it appears that Tosfos understood that this is a test. The dissuading the ger is a means of weeding out the insincere gerim and accepting the ones who insist. The ones who insist are those who demonstrate their sincerity. So Tosfos learned the Gemara like this: the parish nifresh, if he's a person who, upon confronting this kind of response to his interest in geras, would say, you know what, I'm not interested, then we want him to leave. So that's why the Gemara doesn't say kechi the lifish, because we're not taking a stance on the fact that every ger is a negative. But since some gerim are negative, so we need a way of weeding out the good ones and the bad ones. So if we do something, di parish, something that if this way of acting towards him will cause him to be parish, then nifresh, then we want him to leave. That seems to be how Tosfos understood the Gemara. But Rashi says lo yichbas lan. Rashi says the Gemara is not saying that under any circumstances we actively have a negative position on his geras, but we want to take a position of neutrality. And that's very problematic, because what's this idea of this position of neutrality if ultimately a ger is something that's detrimental for Yisrael? And why, if a ger is detrimental, do we notify him that we're not interested, we don't care, but then if he really wants to, then we let him? What are we trying to achieve by this nuanced stance of a statement of neutrality, but then we'll take you if you really want? So the truth is, we have to understand deeply, what does this mean that the gerim are problematic for the Jews? So Rashi says they retain their old practices and they influence the Jews into not being completely faithful to the Torah. On the other hand, we have a Gemara in Pesachim that says that the purpose of exile, says the Gemara, the purpose of exile is this way the Jews are mixed in with all the nations and they influence them, and people, non-Jews, learn to become Jews, and that enriches Judaism, or does something, accomplishes something. We'll soon get to what is accomplished. But here we have a major contradiction, because this Gemara seems to say, the Gemara says on the one hand, in numerous places, Kashem Gerim Yisrael Kasapachas. Gerim seems to be a net harm for the Jews, because they bring in their old culture and their old practices. And the Gemara in Pesachim says that on the contrary, we actually are, if not actively seeking Gerim, but at least consider that the fact that they are converting is part of the divine plan. So then why do we dissuade them, and how do we say that they're...
It's not necessarily a steer. It says kashem, right? It doesn't say that it's inherently a bad thing. It just says it's not so easy.
Right, that's true. And you're anticipating where we're going with this, which is, think about a sapachas. A sapachas is like a foreign growth, like a tzaras, but you can think of it as a growth. There's something problem when the person has a growth, so either the body could integrate it and it could work out, or maybe the body will reject it. So it's a challenge. It's something that the body has to maybe, it might reject it, it might harm the body, but it might also integrate well with the body. So there's definitely that's, I think, what the nuance, what the sapachas is capturing, that there's some sort of nuance over here. And of course, as I mentioned, the whole question over here, clearly our stance to the ger is not a stance of we don't want the ger, but that's getting to just to really bring back to the first question of what is this business of saying, gerim are a problem, so therefore we're going to tell you that we don't want you, or we're not going to tell you that we're going to tell you that we don't care, that we don't actively want you. You see, it's all getting back to that problem. It's true that clearly the point is we're not taking a stance and saying that gerim are certainly negative, but nonetheless the question stands, which is that if kashem gerim sapachas, because they influence us, that would suggest that it's a negative, and that would suggest then that we don't want them. And yet we do want them. The purpose of Galus is to bring them in, attract converts. And even in this Gemara itself, as Rashi points out, we just tell him that we don't mind if you leave. Why is that? If sapachas tells us it reflects some real problem that we have with him, then we shouldn't be neutral. We should really be dissuading him. But the truth is that
the Gemara doesn't say some gerim either. The Gemara says
so that,
gerim.
right. That's the thing. Right. So according to Taisvis, it might mean there's like this risk. There's a risk in gerus because some of them are problematic, and because there's a risk inherent to gerus, therefore we have to be careful in who we accept. That's what Taisvis would learn. Okay.
The good ones might be kisavachas, meaning.
Well, no. So according to Taisvis, they're not right. According to Taisvis,
according to Rashi,
yes,
all gerim are.
Yes, I think so.
Right?
Do you have to say there's an machlekes Rashi Taisus? Could Rashi just be saying like in Taisus Mahalach, if they're nifresh, then we don't. Those are the ones we don't care about.
No, but see, Rashi's explaining the Gemara. No. So you don't care. It's more than that. It's not we don't care about it. So we don't want him. Rashi doesn't say those are the ones we don't want. Rashi following the Lashon Gemara that takes this neutral kind of expression. That if he leaves, let him leave. And Rashi amplifies that by saying, and we don't care. So he's clearly saying the point of the Gemara is
if he's nifresh, if he's one, and that would fit with Taisus, that there's a filter here.
No, but the
and
point
if he
is,
gets filtered out, we don't care about that one.
But you don't. But you're not, it's more than not caring. We actively don't want it. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says la'ichbas la. La'ichbas as sekreished la'ichbas, right? It's like you don't care. It's neutral. It's not. Rashi's not saying it's la'ichbas. La'ichbas. So the truth is like this. Let's think about this Gemara Pesachim. The Gemara Pesachim tells us this novel explanation of Jewish history, that the purpose of exile was to attract Gerim. And that flies in the face of everything we know from Tanakh, which is that we're supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael. But because we sinned, this is in the Torah, this is in the Nevi'im, because we sinned, therefore we were exiled as a punishment. And here you have this Gemara Pesachim that seems to suggest that exile is part of the divine plan to attract more humans to Judaism. How do we square that? Another way to ask the question is, let's say we wouldn't have sinned in an alternative reality, hypothetically, had we not sinned and had we not left Eretz Yisrael, then how would the Gerim find out about Judaism? How would this objective have been fulfilled that we want to attract non-Jews to Judaism? This question that Chaim asks. And in order to get to the depths of the question, we have to really go deeply into what's the Jewish project, why are we interested in Gerim at all? What is the Gemara? We think the Gemara Pesachim, okay, we want Gerim, why? Now, of course, ask why do we want Gerim gets uncomfortably close to asking why are we Jewish? But that's what we have to ask to get to the. We have to figure out what's this project, what's the Torah project about, and why might Gerim be necessary? But it seems in the Gemara that Gerim are only necessary because we sinned, right? Because Galus is a result of sin. Clearly wouldn't have happened had we not sinned. And yet now that we sinned, it's important that we get Gerim. That's what would be suggested. So let's see if we can square that, okay? So in order to think about this, I have to tell you the story of the Jewish people, okay? A wonderful story. It goes like this. Jewish people have this role in the world, okay? And just to be clear, when I talk about having a role, I don't mean anything metaphysical. I mean, Avram Avinu started a project, and we're continuing it. And his project is called this project of, what should we call it? So we can call it Das Hashem. This is what the Nevi'im call it, basically. Das Hashem, knowledge of Hashem. And we'll talk about soon what that means. But the end result of the Jewish project, the Torah project, which we call Geula, is defined by the world being filled with Das Hashem. This is the Rambam, as the Rambam ends up Malachim with days of Mashiach. The whole world is being filled with Das Hashem. Okay, so that's like the ultimate fruition of Judaism, or accomplishment of Judaism, which we call redemption, we call Geula, is when the idea of knowing Hashem will fill the world. So what is the content of Das Hashem? What does this Das Hashem mean? How do we achieve it? Are we achieving it? These are the fundamental questions that I think about all the time, but we're not gonna go into that too much now. But let's suffice to say that the idea of the Torah of Das Hashem, the idea of the Avos that they're teaching Das Hashem, is that they're teaching a way of life that revolves and is founded on a concept called Hashem. Okay, and even though this is the kind of thing that we don't think about enough, you shouldn't be surprised, because the truth is that we don't really know what Hashem means. And that's reflected in the fact that we don't even know what the name of Hashem is. See, this thing, we forgot the name of Hashem. It's a very weird thing that we don't even know the name of what the fundamental of the whole Judaism, the whole Torah is based on. Because the name of Hashem doesn't just mean forget His name. The name of Hashem reflects some truth about Hashem, as all the Mepharshim say, from the Rambam to the Mekubalim. The whole Kabbalah is really a pirush on the Shem Hashem. So the point is, we're used to thinking about Judaism basically as, we're doing the right thing, and we certainly are. I don't mean to take away from that. But we have to also understand, we sort of do this once a year on Tisha B'Av, when we remind ourselves that we don't have anything, and we're missing, everything we have is worthless, but we can't live our whole lives like we can't cry a whole year. So a whole year we tell ourselves we're doing, everything's fine, more or less. But the truth is that we don't really understand the content of what the Torah project is about, at least legamri. Okay, let's say that. I don't mean to overdo this, because on the contrary, we should think about what does Hashem mean, and what does a life of Das Hashem look like, and how does the Torah contribute to that in our living? And I encourage everyone to do that. But at the same time, I want you to realize that we're talking about something that maybe is not really on people's lips, not people think about too much, and that's because we're not in Gula. I mean, we have to get there. That's our mission. So that's the mission of the Torah, is to achieve Das Hashem. And again, that's the content of Gula. The Rambam says the content of Gula is the time when Das Hashem will fill the earth. So obviously we're at a point where Das Hashem doesn't fill the earth. We still have mitzvahs, we still have Torah, and to a certain extent Jewish people have Das Hashem, but there's this concept that we're aiming for, and we're still working on getting there.
Is there a time we're getting back to? Was there a time when we had the Das Hashem? Because
these are great questions. These are excellent questions. Well, first of all, we had Das Hashem when Hashem was revealed to us and when He speaks to us through the Nevi'im. Basically, the essence of Nevuah is called Das Hashem, as we have in Shmuel. Before he was a Navi, it says Shmuel term Yodas Hashem. He didn't have that familiarity with Hashem yet. So Nevuah is called Das Hashem, and Klal Yisrael being led by Nevi'im and having Hashras Hashchina is a kind of Das Hashem. It's meaning, because I'll just tell you what the words mean. Das Hashem means experience of Hashem. It means intimacy with Hashem, a familiarity with Hashem. Das does not mean doesn't mean dry knowledge. So we have Adam Yoda Es Chava Ishta. It means he experienced. It's not a euphemism. It means he had experience of Chava. Das means experience. So Das Hashem is to have experience of Hashem. So what would it mean for a person to have experience of Hashem? We're all experiencing Hashem. What else are we experiencing? But if we don't understand what we're experiencing as Hashem, then we don't have Das Hashem. If we understand our experiencing of Hashem, then we do have Das Hashem. So the first thing would be to know what Hashem is, obviously, and what does that mean, and then to see what would that mean to live with that kind of consciousness. And that's the Jewish project in a nutshell. Where does the Torah fit into that? Okay, there's a lot to learn. We're not going to go into that. So this is our destiny. In other words, what it means is the destiny. This is the project that was founded by Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and this is the project that we are doing for the world. Okay, this is the story, and this is the ongoing story of the Jewish people. It's still happening, and fascinating story. Maybe we consider it the most important story in human history, and that's arguably is true, and meaning demonstrably. But we have to take it to the next level, we have to arrive at the goal. Okay.
What was Shem and Aver doing, and all those other guys learning in yeshiva all day?
Oh, they're learning? This is what they were learning. Now you have another idea what they were learning.
You're saying as Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that was the...
Yeah, okay. So you want to know
it's supposed to be...
The pre-patriarchal people. What about them, huh? You know, this is completely off topic, but it just reminded me, there's a, famously the Rambam makes Avram Avinu into a philosopher who discovered Hashem through his thinking. And this is going along with the Rambam's Mahalach, that you can discover Hashem through thought. But this is something which is controversial. The Mekubalim hold that you need a Kabbalah, you need a Messiah. You need a Messiah, because there are certain things about Hashem. Most important things, according to the Mekubalim, are not accessible through thought, the human intellect alone. So you have to have a Messiah. So Abed Zakaidesh, or maybe Ben Gabi, one of the fundamentals from Kabbalah, he says Avram Avinu didn't start from scratch. He had Shem Ve'aver, and he learned from them, so this is the machlokes. I was going like the Rambam.
Or he got him Zohar straight from Hashem. That's an easier.
Okay, right. No, but the question is how he reached that point, because Ben Kach V'Kach Hikar Es Bayroi, so where did that start from? So according to the Rambam, that started from, because let's say he was 40 years old. So what was he doing until 40? He was searching, and he discovered, and then Hashem revealed himself to him. I guess that's the point. Everyone agrees that there was something that preceded revelation. So the thing that preceded revelation, according to the Rambam, was Chakira, and according to the Mekubalim was... Yeah. So what does Avodah say about that? I don't remember. Ayin Sham. Okay. Yeah, it's a very fundamental question. I mean, the fundamental question is, can we think, or do we need, or it can, certainly some people need the Messiah, because people are not capable, even the Rambam agrees that people who are not fully developed in their intellect or in their intellectual abilities, obviously should and gain from accepting the Messiah. But the Rambam also holds that the greatest people can be like Avraham Avinu and figure it all out from scratch. And that if you do that, then you know it on a much deeper fundamental level. It's not just that, you're not reinventing the wheel. The point is that when it's something that you know because you discovered it yourself and you reasoned through it yourself, you know it in a much deeper way. Okay, but that's off topic. So this is the story of the Jewish people in a nutshell. Okay, now, what about the non-Jews? Okay, what does the Torah want for the non-Jews? Where do they fit into this whole idea? We have this concept called Hashem. And we maintain that this concept is the most fundamental concept to life, and if you live in a way that's consistent with this idea, then that's the best life. That's the best way to live. Okay? Very good. What about the non-Jews? Okay? Where do they fit in? Are they supposed to become Jews? So we have this Gemara in Yivam Schotam. Excuse me for the Marmakimis were sort of bekitza. I put for chulu and stuff, so everyone will have to fill it in Balpeh. I didn't realize we'd be giving it out like that. So I'll fill it in for you. Torah Banon, Ein Mekabim Geir L'Moshe Mashiach. Kayotze Boy. Okay, so first of all, right over there, Ein Mekabim Geir L'Moshe Mashiach. When Mashiach's going to come, then we don't accept Geir anymore. Okay? So that tells us that the end game of Molar Etz Deis Hashem, everyone's going to know Hashem, does not mean that everyone's going to be Jewish. Apparently, you can have Das Hashem and be a non-Jew. Yeah, I don't see a conflict there. Das Hashem is an idea. And, of course, like I said before, we have to figure out where the Torah fits into it. Clearly, the Torah is supporting it. But nonetheless, and we'll get a little more color to this, conceptually, you can have Das Hashem, you can know about Hashem, and still be a non-Jew, still don't do the Torah. Torah is Vaydav Hashem Moshe L'Mitzvahs B'nai Yisrael. This is B'nai Yisrael. B'nai Yisrael has their role in bringing Das Hashem to the world, as we'll soon understand a little better. But that's their role, to be the teachers, to be the teachers of Das Hashem. And for that role, there's the Torah and the whole Jewish experience. And when the non-Jews will understand Das Hashem, because they'll be taught it, and Mashiach will teach them, as the Rambam describes, as the Nevi'im describe. That doesn't mean they become Jewish. Okay. Now, the Gemara sounds like the reason why you don't accept Geim as Mashiach is because you distrust their motives. Because the Gemara continues, it says, just like you don't accept Geim as Mashiach, they also didn't take Gerim the days of David, the days of Shlomo. It says the Rambam in Malachim. I mean, this is obvious. What about David and Shlomo? So Rambam in Malachim says, in the days of David, the non-Jews were afraid of David because he was waging wars. And some of them wanted to switch flags, and the motive really would be to protect themselves physically. Therefore, they're not doing it l'shem Shemayim. Days of Shlomo was one of the glorious days, the golden age of the Jewish people, so we're afraid of doing it for wealth and power. And since the Gemara compares this, it would seem like the point of the Gemara is that when things are good for the Jews, we don't accept Gerim, right? And notice, by the way, when things are bad for the Jews, we tell them, everything's so awful for the Jews. That's the Gemara that we started with. You tell them things are so awful. And when things are good for the Jews, we're not makabel. So basically, Gerus is not supposed to happen, more or less. Okay? And we'll get to this. But then we have that Gemara in Zohar. It says Gerus is the purpose of Gauss. We're getting it. But in terms of like the setup of history is such that there's really Gerus is always sort of off the table. We first tell him, why would you want this? And if he says, I'm not worthy to suffer with the Jews, then we're makabel. So the Gemara sounds like the point is a guy comes to us, Mashiach, and says, now you come. Yeah, it's only because you want to enjoy whatever we're enjoying the Mashiach, right?
You don't want to be a slave.
Huh?
You don't want to be a slave.
It's not going to be slaves. I'm not into the slaves things. Okay, whatever, we'll get to that. No, they're not slaves, okay? Not slaves. So we'll get to what they're doing. We'll get a little understanding of that so-called. Okay, the Zohar and the Tikkunei Zohar, and there's one Marmakim there on the bottom, the last one over there, but this is in numerous places in the Zohar. The same idea recurs, which is that the reason why we don't take Ge'im Mashiach is because the pasuk says Hashem badad yanchenu ve'ein imay el necher. Hashem is alone with the Jews, and there's no foreign God together with Hashem. Okay, so first of all, what does a foreign God mean? A foreign God means that, as the Ramban explains, the nations have a malach called a sar, the Shem Sarim. The nations each have a malach that's intermediary between them and Hashem. And Hashem has this direct relationship with Bnei Yisrael. And we don't want to mix in, to get in the way of this close, special relationship of Hashem and Am Yisrael. We don't want to mix in any of the other malachim, the other ideas. We'll soon explain what that means a little bit. We don't want to mix that into the relationship of Hashem and Bnei Yisrael, and therefore the Messianic Mashiach, they're not welcome. That's what the Zohar says in numerous places. And I maintain that actually that's the Gemara means the same thing. The Gemara and the Zohar are complementary. We need both of these reasons. In other words, the Gemara is mashma that the reason you're not makabel gerim is because you don't trust their motives. The Zohar says you're not makabel gerim because the native Jews and Hashem are supposed to be secluded, badad, faithful to each other without any admixtures. But I believe the two things go together, and I'll tell you why. How do you read the Gemara on a simple level? So the Gemara is saying this: a guy comes in Messianic Mashiach, and we say, you know what? We don't trust you. We don't want to be Jewish because everything is awesome for the Jews. Why would you not trust Why would you not trust his motives? If the Messianic Mashiach, the world's going to recognize Hashem, and he understands Hashem Echad and so on. So that's why he wants to be Jewish. Why would you say Why would you think he's only being Jewish because of some ulterior motive? If the world is full of Das Hashem, and it's a wonderful thing to serve Hashem as a Jew, why shouldn't he want to be Jewish? Why would you think that he's not? Of course, maybe it's also better. I don't know what's happening. We'll soon get to that. What's happening to the other guys? But why would you say that he's only doing it Shalei Shem Shemayim? The whole world's full of Das Hashem. Where does the Shalei Shem Shemayim come in? So the answer is that in the Messianic Mashiach, as the Zohar says, there's a special Jewish role in the world, which is unique to the Jews, and the non-Jews, their whole history and everything about the national culture is not necessary for that role. The Jews can do what the Jews have to do in Messianic Mashiach, and the Jews alone are the ones who are supposed to do it. A non-Jew wants to serve Hashem. Serve Hashem. Great. You have Das Hashem. Serve Hashem. How should you serve Hashem? Well, let's figure it out. Maybe they'll have a Torah. By the way, I was wondering about this. Will the non-Jews receive a Torah designed for them? This Torah that we have is designed for us. In other words, we have a role in the world. Our role in the world is not the same as the role for every single other nation. So maybe they'll get their own Torah. This whole thing about the Torah will never change is our Torah never changes. What about the Shevet Bnei Noach? Could that never change? I don't know. I'm wondering about this lately. Because the Shevet Bnei Noach changed once. It's changed for us, right? We had Shevet Mitzvahs, and then we got the Torah. And the non-Jews also will offer the Torah. So I suspect they could have a Torah also. A Torah for a Russian, a Torah for a German. What's your Torah? What does it mean, what's your Torah? It means, depending on what does Das Hashem mean, or what does Das Hashem necessitate, I should say, given that you're not a native Jew, you don't have the experience of the Jewish people, you're not a descendant of Avraham Avinu, you have your own world, your own life, your own history. Now you understand there's an idea called Hashem. Okay, so what does that mean? How should you live in a way that's consistent with Das Hashem, and what should the law be for the non-Jew? Those are good questions, which maybe a Navi will tell us. But there's no reason that he should become a Jew. Therefore, says the Gemara, if he does want to become a Jew, we suspect him of having ulterior motives. But the Gemara and the Zohar are complementary. Because on the one hand, we don't need him. If he's doing it l'shem shemayim, says the Zohar, we don't need you. The Jews could do their role by themselves. And if you're doing it for other reasons, says the Gemara, that's the rule of Mekabel. Just like we're Mekabel made of Mishleima, so too we're not Mekabel be Mashiach. So, and this is, by the way, parenthetically, I find this to be true in general, that sometimes you find these conflicts between Gemaras and Kabbalah, and actually, in a deeper level, they're both necessary. Here, the Gemara is saying a very surface, basic thing that we don't trust his motives, but if you think about it deeply, you actually need to really bring in this idea that we don't need him for the service of Hashem. See again, because if we needed him for the service of Hashem, then why would we distrust his motives? It's Moshe Mashiach. Everyone recognizes Hashem. He wants to be a Jew. Why would we think he's not doing it for the right reasons? The answer is we don't need him to be a Jew. The Jewish people will do the Jewish thing. You want to serve Hashem because you have to Hashem, that doesn't mean you have to be Jewish. We don't need the whole world to be Jewish.
Isn't the nature of being Jewish different once the world is Moli Das Hashem? I mean,
How
the way you're framing it, that the role of the Jewish people is to teach the world about HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once Moshe Mashiach are here, Malchal Eretz Deis Hashem, so Memela, it's done. It's mission accomplished. So now, fundamentally, what it means to be a Jewish person, the nature of our mission is changed.
Right. Well, I mean, this perhaps one way to think about it is probably very true. Mamlechas Kohen V'Goy Kaddish, right? We're going to read on Shavuos, Mamlechas Kohen V'Goy Kaddish. We're supposed to be a nation of priests and a holy people. That wasn't fulfilled. The Medrash says, because we're supposed to all be Kahanim. And comes the Egel, and we lost the Kahuna. V'atem tiyu li Mamlechas Kohenim. Li, says the Medrash, li is match of 40. Because it's lasted all of 40 days. 40 days later, we lost the Madrig of Kahuna. And we also lost the Madrig of Malachim. Kol Yisrael b'nei Malachim has to do with this. We're supposed to be kings, and we're supposed to be Kahanim. All of us. Now, you can't have a world that's all kings, and you can't have a world that's all Kahanim. Let's say a Kohen. A Kohen's role is to be the priest and to teach Torah. The whole world's not supposed to be teaching Torah. Who's going to be doing everything else? That's where the slavery comes in. It's not slavery. When the pasuk says "V'amdu acherim v'ro'ot soinchem," the other people will do work. It means the Jewish role is to be teachers. This, I think, is not a full answer. It's only a partial answer. Just because the world is full of Das Hashem doesn't mean we don't have to maintain that. We have to teach that. We have to, and people have to be kahanim. They have to be dedicated to service of Hashem and to the exclusion of everything else. But then there's the other nations, and they have their roles. And by the way, parenthetically, this is what, as we mentioned before, the Ramban says the concept of Sarim. Each nation has their Sar. This is what it means when we talk about the Shivim Sarim. It means that each nation has their main thing that they focus on, their destiny, just like the Jewish people have a destiny. It's built into the world that is a Jewish project. So there's another project of each nation. That they have their genius, they have their focus, and what they're good at, and what they should be doing. What they should be doing in a way that's influenced by and consistent with Das Hashem. But it doesn't mean that the only thing they're doing is let's say teaching Torah. To make it crude, I'm not saying on whether Jews will work or not. Maybe not. I mean that's Chazal seem to say they won't. There's no need to work because that doesn't mean they don't need to work. Our productivity is about Das Hashem. The productivity of whoever it may be, or any other nation, is to apply Das Hashem in some practical way, in some physically, materially productive way. Okay, so there's this kind of arrangement of a societal, of nations, international arrangement that is this idea of Das Hashem, and that's what the Mashiach will teach, and the Jewish people will understand, and then further teach that to the world, who will then utilize their particular, each individual national genius to that end, and that's basically the utopia described by the Nevi'im. Okay, so that's why we have no need for them to be Megayah. Okay, let them do their thing, let them do it well, and as we said, and if nonetheless he wants to be Megayah, so why? What do you have to be Megayah for? You want to be a teacher? Not everyone's supposed to be a teacher. Not everyone's supposed to be a teacher. So Hashem arranges it very nicely. As one nation, they're going to be the Kahanim and the Malachim, and everyone else does their role. Right? It's like everyone wants to learn Kail. Mechates, everyone Kail. Whatever. Okay, so I did not mean to get controversial. No, but I'm saying the point is a functioning society needs different people doing different. That's what I meant. Division of labor. So there's the division of labor in God's plan for humanity as well. And if someone wants to switch over, maybe he's like, because that's good for me. Then we're going to say, no, we don't trust you. Hashem doesn't need you to be Jewish. So what do you want to be Jewish for? Not L'Shem Shemayim. Maybe. So sometimes people might want to be Jewish L'Shem Shemayim because the Jewish thing, that's right for me. I can't do the Chinese thing, the German thing, the Japanese thing. It doesn't work for me. I have a Jewish neshama, whatever. Okay. But Yisrael Mashiach, where there's too many reasons to do it that are temporal reasons and maybe are negiyas, we don't trust you that you're doing it L'Shem Shemayim because really L'Shem Shemayim, Hashem doesn't need you. Okay, that's the combination.
So pre-Yisrael Mashiach also knowing this.
Yeah. What do we need him for?
Yeah.
That's what we're getting to. Okay. Now let's get to this question.
Where do non-Torah observant Jews fit into this also? I don't know if you're going to discuss that at all, but it seems like
What's your question? What's your name, by the way?
Binyamin.
Okay. What's the question exactly?
Question is, like, we're talking about the Gemara, we're talking about Das Hashem, but then there's Jews that don't have Das Hashem.
Right.
They're supposed to be, teachers also, but
Right.
they're almost as, they're more similar to non-Jews. I mean, again,
Right. Well, here's the thing.
with at least the Das Hashem.
Yeah, well, see, it sort of goes the other way, because if we start figuring out what Das Hashem is, we might actually discover that non-observant Jews have it more than we realize. Because although I believe, and this is certainly the Torah's designed, is that the Torah supports Das Hashem and follows from Das Hashem. In other words, Das Hashem necessitates that one should keep the Torah. That doesn't mean that a person who is not keeping the Torah doesn't have Das Hashem or has no Das Hashem. You see? A person could not have ever heard, the same way I maintain that we have a little Das Hashem as Jews, even though we don't know what the Shem Hashem is. And most people wouldn't even be able, I think most people probably wouldn't be able to explain what a God is. But we have some concept, some idea of it. So you might discover that that even the person who's non-observant actually has that concept in his psyche. No,
I guess
you're not buying it, huh?
Torah.
I'm going the other way. What?
I'm basing it on
Right. No, but see, you're making a mistake because you're just taking Torah as being identical with Das Hashem. It's not. It's supportive of Das Hashem, and that opens up the question of how is Torah supportive of that? But the same Avraham Avinu is not doing Torah per se. So clearly, the Torah comes after. The Torah is supportive of the Avram's project. I don't think Avram's project would succeed without the Torah. I'm going to say that again. The Torah is necessary for the project, but it's a part of the project. It's not the project. It's not the end all of the Jewish project.
Is the pre-Moshe Mashiach project of the Jewish people to bring Das Hashem to the non-Jews, and therefore during Moshe Mashiach, the project is now completely different because Das Hashem is evident?
Again, what's the question? If pre-Moshe Mashiach, the role would be
the project of the Jewish people to the non-Jewish world is to bring about Das Hashem. I mean, we're trying to do it on our own to find it. Are we also trying to help the non-Jewish world find it?
Oh, should we be doing that?
Should we do? Is that?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
But we were restricted because we can't reveal certain secrets.
Okay, so that's you get the problem about not teaching Torah to non-Jews, right? It's a very important issue.
Also, one of the shuros of not revealing secrets.
Right, exactly. It's not easy to be Jewish. There's always these tensions. I'm saying there's these tensions that have to be balanced. In fact, the one we're talking about right now, we have this big tension about Geir. So it's a very good question. It requires more than just a quick answer. Okay, so let's go back to the question of the Gemara Pesachim. Gemara Pesachim says that the purpose of exile is so that we should attract converts. And as you were raised, it becomes even more difficult now because what do we need it for? The descendants of Abraham and Yaakov, through their heritage and through their experiences, they have the right thing. They have what it takes, either because of their character or because of their history, both. They have the right thing. They have what it takes to be the project of Judaism. And again, the whole world doesn't have to become Jews. So why are we looking for anyone to become Jews? So the answer is that, let's think about chet, okay? We asked a different question. We said, the Gemara says the purpose of Galus is to attract Gerim, but I thought Galus only happened after we sinned and it's a punishment. So let's think about chet, okay? Now we have a little bit of an understanding what chet is. Chet means when the Jews are not faithful to their destiny, to their essence. Here you have this project, this Jewish project, started by Avraham and Yaakov, and are we living up to it or not? If we're not living up to it, that's chet. Again, there's particular sins we talk about, particular averis, but in the deepest level, what we're really looking for is, are we living up to what the Jewish people are supposed to do or not? So what if we don't live up to it? We do have a Zagi the Rashi was done, like back in the day, by Rishi. So now what? So now, what happened is we mixed into our own experience, our own project, our own history, we mixed in something that's foreign to Judaism. We're not faithful to our destiny and to our roots. So now what do we do? Once the Jewish people slips from their path of Das Hashem, Avraham Avinu's project, and they do Avodah Gida was done. So now what? So one option is go back to where you were. Revert to your old ways. Doesn't always work that way. Once a person gets used to a different way of living, or he gets certain habits or certain midas, you can't always tell him to just lose them. Sometimes you have to do is, you have to figure out a way to incorporate these kinds of midas that maybe are foreign to your original destiny. You have to figure out a way to make them serve your original destiny. And by the way, this is not only true about this whole national destiny of Judaism. I think a person could say this in his own life. A person has a goal, let's say, right? And he gets sidetracked. So he thinks, okay, I'm going to ignore that. Or he can figure out a way to bring in this new interest that he had, to figure out a way to subsume that, to incorporate that into his overarching goals in life. So same thing, Jewish people, they were chayte. So now what? So now, in order to reconstruct the Das Hashem project, they have to figure out a way to incorporate their foreign, these midas that they adopted, which were foreign to their essence. They have to figure out a way to kasha them up, to be retire them, and to bring them, to include those in Das Hashem. And you'll pardon me for talking in so abstract, limited in time, so we'll have to talk about this in generalities. But I think you get the idea. Same way I think the analogy of a person's life, you could have a certain track in life and goals, and if you get sidetracked, so, sometimes you can just go back to where you were. More often, you're not able to just undo something, but you could channel it in the right direction. So what happened with Judaism, and see, Judaism is very interesting. It's a dynamic thing. It's a historical thing. It changes through history. What do you mean it changes through history? There's the original Judaism when we still have this possibility of being completely faithful to the project of Yaakov. And then we have, well, now what? Now after the Jewish people were not faithful to that, they were chayte. By the way, chayte means to miss a target. It's to miss a target. That's called chayte. So they're a little off. They're not exactly where they're supposed to be. So they have to figure out a way to bring those foreign midas, which we'll call them non-Jewish midas because they're not integral to the Jewish project. They have to figure out a way to include those in the Torah project. You know what happens when you include those foreign things in Torah projects? The foreigners perk up and say, oh, I could be a Jew too. Because as you mentioned, the idea of the Shivim Sarim is that each nation has their midah. Ramban, who talks about the fact that each nation has 70 sarim, says also there's 70 midas in the soul. The Ramban says in Parashat Shivim Kochos HaNefesh, there's 70 ways of being, 70 values that people have. Different people are motivated by different things. Once we start incorporating some of these things that are really foreign to the original Judaism, but once we start making them part of Judaism, then the non-Jew who's into those foreign midas finds a place within Judaism. So the Gemara is saying, you know why Hashem sent us into Galus? To bring back in, what the Gemara means is, what do you mean? We said the Galus is because of sin. The Gemara is saying is like this. The Gemara is saying is that the way to fix our sin of not being authentic Jews is to figure out a way to bring non-authentic Jews, or non-original Jews, to incorporate them, to bring them into the fold. So the fact that we attract Gerim is the tikkun. I don't mean tikkun because I don't mean we're doing a good thing instead of a bad thing. It is the essence of tshuva, because the essence of our tshuva is reconstructing a Das Hashem, reconstructing a path towards Das Hashem, but now a path towards Das Hashem that acknowledges and incorporates these things that were not original to the project of Judaism. And then the non-Jew is welcome because he fits in. He found a way to fit in. Okay?
But other than it being foreign, what's it correcting from us going off? I mean, it's not correcting the going off. It's just correcting that it's a foreign. It's just bringing another foreign thing in.
Right. No, but maybe we could find a way to make that Jewish. Can you find a way to make it Jewish? To give you an example, I have to give an example for this. What's your question? Maybe I didn't understand the question. What are we doing by bringing it in?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, see, that's the thing. I'm talking in great abstractions, but we have this thing called Hashem, and we have and this concept called Hashem necessitates a certain way of life. That's an ideal. That's a perfect ideal. If we diverge from that, and now we have some kinds of, let's say, habits or characteristics that are not consistent with that way of life, what do you do now? Okay, so can you take those habits and find a way to make them contribute, to make them somehow enrich, or at least contribute towards Das Hashem? No? See that?
So that objectively, Goyim are contributing to Das Hashem because it's
correct. The qualities. Well, no, it's more like the qualities that they have now become incorporated into Judaism. Okay, let me try to give you an example. Okay, let's say we come to America, right? Let's say America is very into, let's say, ambition. Okay, let's say ambition is an American thing. Just I'm making this up. It doesn't have to be the case. But let's just say that. Let's say ambition is an American kind of characteristic. And really, Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, we're not so into ambition as much as Americans are. Okay, let's say. And if we would have been faithful to Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, we wouldn't be so into self-actualization. Okay, just make none yet. Okay, but now we became a little American. And remember, I'm not saying we became American after we came to America. We became a little American because we were chayte. Or once upon 2,000 years ago, we were chayte by being too ambitious. We really shouldn't have been so ambitious. Had we really understood Das Hashem, we wouldn't be so ambitious. Okay. What do we have to do now? We have to figure out a way to take the meat of ambition, which is not original to our nation, and figure out a way to channel that into Das Hashem. What are the mechanics of that? Okay, we have a lot of work to do. But you can see, so now, but once we do that, now the American guy is like, oh, see, ambition and Judaism go together, so I want to be Jewish also in the Hanami. Well, why not? Why not? You can't, there's no reason not to. And in fact, on the contrary, as we're getting to the Rashi, we actually want the American fellow to join us. Why? Because in our project of making ambition Jewish, if we're going to tell the American guy, oh, you're not Jewish. So then basically we're saying we're not Jewish, right? If our hope to get back to our original thing is to say these midas, which are really not inherent to Judaism, can be made Jewish, so then we have to accept this guy as well. Okay, now let's get back
as long as
to
you
the
want the
Rashi.
ambition for Judaism and not the
Right.
ambition for ambitions.
Right, for sure. So now let's get to Rashi.
Why
Yeah.
do you need here? Why can't us being in Golos
Yeah.
be that?
Because again, so that's the point I was just saying, that it actually supports this project of ours. If we're on this mission to again, we're using that example, to channel ambition towards Judaism, then that means you can't do that without meeting your ambitious non-Jewish neighbor and telling him, I have this great religion. You could not talk about it, but by definition, you're attracting him.
But the only difference between us and him is that we have a history.
Right.
We don't know anything about it unless we learn about it.
Right.
So I was always under the assumption that the Torah is I thought the metaphor that you were saying about what the Torah does and why it's here is we're fighting all those cultural changes over the years that
Right.
make us something else than
Right.
we were previously.
Right. And here I'm saying that we're
us-
embracing it.
No, so if we're in this culture,
Right.
then us returning to Das Hashem
Mm-hmm.
is the same thing as bringing a Gary, because what
Right.
we're really trying to do is make up for what we've done.
Right. So exactly. So if we're making up for what we've done by figuring out a way to utilize our new psyche, our new selves, and figure out a way to make that work in Judaism, then that gives a place for the ger as well. Because what we're doing is we're not trying to turn back the clock. You can't turn back the clock. It doesn't happen. What we did for 1,000 years is part of our history now, and if we have to figure out a way to find Hashem with those midos.
But working on the Gary is really just working on yourself.
Exactly. That's exactly the point, right?
easier.
That's the point. No, and it's easy. What? It's easy to work on yourself if the ger as well.
Tell someone you're doing this wrong, and
Right. I mean, you tell the ger, you cannot tell the ger you don't belong. If you go home and you tell yourself you do belong, in other words, we tell the ger, Mr. Guy, we don't want you. You know who else is a guy? You're a guy. That's the point. We all became shtickle guyish. So what do you mean you don't want the ger? Who do you think you are? It's okay. It's okay that you did avodah. We'll figure out a way back. It's okay that you did the Rashi because there's a way back. Okay, there's a way back. That means the ger is also right. So had we not been chaytis, now getting back to the questions of what do we need the ger for, and why do we only need the ger for? Because we were chaytis. Had we not been chaytis, so we're doing the original Das Hashem. Yes, everyone has to learn Das Hashem. We'll teach them Das Hashem. They'll come learn. Ki mitzin teitzitzoyed v'Hashem Yishalayim. Very nice. But now that we were chayte, which means we're not faithful to our own essence. So what then are we doing? There's only a bunch 70 choices of how to live your life in its root. So if we're not doing Das Hashem, it means we're doing one of the other things. Doing one of the other things, we have to figure out a way to reconstruct Das Hashem, incorporating one of these other midas that are foreign to Judaism. Incorporating those, then the ger is welcome. So now let's get to. We have a few more minutes. Where are we holding on? Yeah. So let's get to the.
We can only fix it through the ger.
What's that?
We can only fix our faults through the ger.
I believe so, because basically, if we would turn to the ger and say we don't want you, the only way to say that would be to say, your maisim, like Rashi says, what's the problem with the game? We'll get to Rashi's really kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but Rashi says, what's the problem with the game? They have maisim, oiches maseim. Well, we're also oiches maseim. We also have a past that's not so rosy. So we cannot, at the same time, embrace ourselves and figure out a way back to ourselves and not embrace it. It's not emes, right? And by the way, not emes doesn't just mean that we like emes. It means it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. What's your message? What's your message? It's a hypocritical. It doesn't work. Yeah, I'm not saying we have to be emes. I mean, we do. It doesn't work. You have to, in deep level, what is Judaism? Why are you telling this guy he can't come? So if you tell him, you know why? Because we have a thing which has nothing to do with you, because we're very fundamentally different than you, because we have this history which is pure. We're not pure as a supremacy thing, just we're doing something that you're not shaykh to. Okay, but that's not true anymore. Because now we're doing something that he is shaykh to, because what we're doing is influenced and colored by the history called chait. And again, chait means not being true to our destiny.
Why is state not just doing a virus?
It is, but that's what's not being.
Let's say shlichus.
Of course it is.
So we start, let's say or Gila Rice, start doing any of these averas.
Right.
Why are we mentioning ambition? I'm just not sure why you're using that as
Because you're talking about actions. I was trying to get it down to the level of the character traits.
More of Das Hashem entire. I feel like it's also
Okay, that gets to that question. I know that the elephant in the room, to borrow a behemoth Meya. But that's an important question. Look, I hope that this conversation this year opens up more questions than it answers, because that's a good year should do. But we can't get everything here. But the Torah is supporting that, right? The Avera is supporting that. But certainly Avera and an Avera is a lack of Das Hashem, absolutely. So now let's get to this nuanced stance we take towards Gerim, okay? On the one hand, we need them in the sense that our new Judaism, let's call it, speaks to them, and they can be a part of it because they have those midos, those other midos, the ones of chait, the ones that are chait for us. On the other hand, that's the only reason that Judaism allows for them to have a place in Judaism is because we're not the original Jews, as we want to be. Sort of. We look back to Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov as our models, and we look back as the Torah and the Nevi'im and everything as the models of how we're supposed to be. So even though on the one hand we say, don't be too harsh on yourself, because you're never going to get back to the Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov in the same way. You have to find a new path back. The new path accepts all the things you went through and your history, okay? But on the other hand, that's not l'chatchila. L'chatchila, we hold up the pure picture of Torah that we can say is symbolized by Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, and we hold that up as the ideal. So here's the sapachas thing. The sapachas, the Gemara sapachas, they're a foreign entity. They're a foreign entity to the body of the Jewish nation. But this is something that happened to us. Like I said, we're also not original. We're not the original Jews. So there's this something that's foreign to the original Judaism, but that's really a reflection of the fact that we've become foreign to the original Jews, and therefore the Ger and us have something in common. So, go ahead.
When you say original Jews, you mean as far as the religion, or it's historically, as in, we don't
Ancestry?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the religion. I'm talking about religion. Because you can have a ger, or you can have someone descended from gerim that became integrated. So even though the Zohar says in the future, in the base of Mashiach, it's only Hashem and the Jews, it doesn't mean that the gerim who are well integrated in the Jewish people, they're not going to be kicked out. Okay, the Zohar talks about the Erev Rav being removed, because the Erev Rav is this idea that look, not all gerim actually integrate. They don't take so well to the body of the Jewish people, like the sapachas. It's either rejected or it works out. So it's ultimately about being faithful to the Das Hashem. But we're not faithful to it. That's our history of chait, and now we have to figure out a way back. And therefore, our stance to the ger has changed. Okay, but here's what's going to happen. Let's say we turn to the ger and we say, "Oh, we really want you, right? We love you very much." We don't take a stance in neutrality. What does Rashi say? Back to the Rashi, okay? Going back to the Rashi. Ger comes along and we tell him, you should know, we want you to know that I am neutral to this whole project of yours. That's what Rashi says. That's the message. Why are we giving that message? Because we have a tightrope to walk over here, which is that on the one hand, we need the ger and what the ger represents, which is that we need to find a way back towards original Judaism, to Das Hashem, that allows for the fact that we're not perfect and not the way it was envisioned in the first place. But on the other hand, that's not something that we embrace. We're not proud of that. We don't think that's a good thing, all else being equal. We wish that we would never have been exiled, to put it in other words, right? If you're going to embrace the ger, then it's like you're saying, oh, this is great, this is fine. Falling is fine, sin is fine, exile is fine. It's not fine. And this stance that it's not fine is very important, because like I said, that's the way we hold up Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Moshe, and the original pure model vision of Judaism. We hold that up as being the ideal by not embracing where sin has brought us to. So it's important for us to take the stance on the ger of neutrality, because that way we can, on the one hand, have the benefits of gerus, which is that our sins can be rectified and reintegrated. But on the other hand, we can't run after it too much and embrace it. Okay, and I'll give you another example. Like, let's say, here's maybe a good example.
Throughout our history, we have a lot of episodes of people running after the sin, thinking that was a good thing to bring that back into the fold.
Right, for sure. But yeah, you don't have to get that. That's really like a kind of theological, metaphysical thing. You don't have to go that deep. Let's say you'll have let's say American Jewish kids get into actors. Let's say, okay, so like, oh, an actor comes to me, the guy. Like, oh, it's great. That's exactly what we're talking about. Why is it great? Because then the kid, everyone who loves actors, will see that even the actor chaps Judaism good, and they'll realize that you could appreciate whatever you appreciate about actors, whatever it is exactly that people appreciate them, and that itself could somehow be brought to serve Hashem, and that will be a great ticket for kids, Jewish kids who are into actors. Okay, fine, that I accept. That's exactly what we're talking about in a nutshell. But what if I'm like, oh, an actor, I want to get this actor to be Megayer because it'll be amazing. So what you're doing by saying that is you're giving your stamp of approval to the fact that everyone's into actors. And really, they shouldn't be into actors. But they aren't actors. But they shouldn't be. So Mela, I want to go on record as saying, if a new actor's name, nobody knows an actor's name. Yeah, okay. If Leonardo DiCaprio wants to be Megayer, you should know I could not care less. That's the point. That's the whole point. Because if I'm going to say, the guy, what I'm doing is, mechazik.
What about if he's known for the midas that people are, that's the midas that everyone's having a hard time with these days?
Right. So again, I really do want him. No, so I do want him to be a guy. Whoa. See, when I just said that, the guy, I'm neutral. I really want him to be a guy, but I have to take a stance of neutrality, because if I'm going to overtly engage in his gerus as a positive thing, then that risks
opening the door.
Right. I'm embracing and falling after my sin instead of saying, look, I'm in a bad state. I need a Yeshua. Part of the problem is that the oil mic's acting. If Gapi was Megayer, it's going to help for that. Yeah, it's going to help for that. But I can't get too excited about it, because I get too excited about it, it's basically saying that it's okay that people aren't. And really, it's not okay. Really, they shouldn't be interacting. So the stance of neutrality is a way of capturing this nuance. Okay, this is a subtle kind of stance that we on the one hand get the benefits of the gerus when it happens, but we have to be very careful not to run after those midas royas and say, we're in it, we're in that whole thing. No, that's
like a covert mission. Really, that's
sort
what we're
of,
here for.
Yeah,
but we just can't endorse that. That's what we're
right.
Here for.
Exactly. It's a little bit political, but also it's psychological and political. No, I think it's both.
It's also chasing versus the person coming to.
Exactly. So it's a political move. It's important to take a stance of neutrality politically. We don't want to endorse it, but also I think psychologically. In other words, we can't get too excited about it, because then what that does is that it affirms our midas royas too much, and we have to say, look, we have these midas, but we're not like them, and this is our way of doing that.
So why don't we do the missionary work for just good?
What?
For good, nothing to act. No, forget about all the bad stuff. The
Right.
actors.
Right.
Why do we go out and recruit?
Again, because we don't need them to be Jewish. We don't need them to be Jewish. No, we don't. We really don't. We don't. Then knows the end game. The end game is not that everyone should be Jewish. You want to teach Das Hashem to the world? You definitely should. Now, the question of teaching Torah to the non-Jews, you have to look into it. That's a question, halacha question, real
I
question.
think Saul's point though is valid.
Yeah.
There are good midos in the non-Jewish world.
Exactly, that's what we're talking about.
That could be a benefit for us.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Why are they a benefit for us? Because because they're half Jews to begin with. No, do we have them or not? I mean, if we don't have them, saying that
But the assumption is that we always had those good midos back in the day.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I mean,
No, that's the assumption of Torah. That is the assumption of it. The assumption of Torah is that Das Hashem is everything. You're good. You're good to go if you have it. And anything that's wrong with us is because we deviated from assumption of Avram Yitzchak Yaakov are the perfect people. Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, Moshe, etc. the perfect people. That's the Torah's model. And then anything wrong is a deviation from that. And then anything we do that's not involving that story is because once we deviated, as we discussed, the whole thing. Okay, fine. So that's the point about once I finish this thing, that in the Yisrael Mashiach, we don't need this game again, because once we rebuilt Das Hashem, then Hashem brought it down. Now that we are not with Hashem, as we started at the beginning of this year, Das Hashem is as far an idea to us, because we're a little bit mixed in with these Il Nechars, with the Shivim Sarim, with all these other ideas. So now we need the Gerim. Once we're going to reconstruct it and finish our mission, then we don't need them anymore. There's no function to them anymore. Yes, so go ahead.
Thinking like this, it seems like it's all for us, and then they're just a pawn, but Lamaisa now they're a yid.
Right, no, so it's all for the mission of Das Hashem. It's all for the mission of that's the answer. It's not for us. There's the Torah, we are tools for the Torah's mission.
We're the pawns also.
We're the pawns, yeah.
So now
Exactly.
it's just another-
We're just incorporating other pawns.
Yeah.
In the sense that, well, I mean, what does it mean you're the pawn? Are you the pawn to making money because you want to make money? No, if this is an important project, then you should do it. And yeah, I think it's important. And you should also think it's important. To do the project of teaching, of spreading Das Hashem. That's our particular role. And their role is to live in accord with Das Hashem, not necessarily to teach it, as we discussed before. But I don't think there's a differentiation. It's not like we're utilizing them, we're manipulating them. Everyone's looking for the good. There's only one thing to look for in this world. It's the good. And what's the good? To find the good. And figure out what to do about it. There's not much more to do.
This all rests on the presumption of perfection of the others, how to handle at least perceived affairs of the others.
Okay, these are good questions. Excellent questions. No. I mean, the answer to that, in short, is that the others themselves didn't reach this. They truly did not reach Das Hashem. But Avraham Avinu said, "B'mo'eda." That was one of his sins. And Yaakov said, yeah, so it's an ideal. So it's a theoretical ideal. Yeah, it's a theoretical ideal which they got the ball rolling on, let's say. Okay? I mean, look, in a shir like this, and this I'll conclude with this, I'm talking in the abstract, and we're also talking in a very absolute terms, and nothing is absolute. But the Torah gives us a model. And for understanding the model, and certainly in the time allotted to us, it's worth thinking about it in very absolute terms. But yes, absolutely nothing is quite like that in this world. These are ideas. I want to just end with a diak in the Gemara and then make one more point. When the ger comes to Megayer, we tell him, "Ma ra'isa shebatzal is gayer." Don't you know that the Jews are persecuted? That's a very funny question. We're so used to this, everyone knows this, but it's such a weird question. Ma ra'isa shebatzal is gayer. What motivated you to come? Don't you know that Jews are persecuted? What do you mean? I'm motivated to come. Wants to serve Hashem. What type of weird question is that? You want to say by the way, it's a bad idea. Okay, fine, but it's not what we tell them. We tell them, why are you doing this? Okay? What's going on? Why are you doing? Wants to serve Hashem. The answer is serving Hashem does not mean being Jewish. As we discussed. So now I know everyone's so confused. What does serving Hashem mean? I thought serving Hashem means the Torah. Okay, this is our work we have to do. Torah serves serving Hashem for the Jewish people. This is the way the Jewish people are supposed to serve Hashem. This is their role in the world. You want to serve Hashem? You have your role in the world. What do you want to be guy for? Oh, you like the Jewish way of serving Hashem? Why would you like the Jewish way of serving Hashem? It's full of suffering. It's not shkishmak. It's not kedai. That's what's going on in this Gemara. So again, to bring the last point, we're talking about these things in a very abstract way. So I think we have two main things to work on, which is number one, to figure out whether these things can be understood in an actual way, instead of these great abstractions that we have to limit ourselves to in order to study it. And the second thing is more difficult, is to see what can be done about this. Is to see, how do we find the original Das Hashem? How do we teach it to all the nations according to their roles? This is a general outline, but we have to fill it in a practical way, and we have to see if we can do it in a practical way, which is the work of Geula, may we soon be zeicha to it.
Amen. So does that mean we never had this ideal, or we